Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So, The Eternals has been a movie that people seem to be really divisive on. Surprisingly, an overwhelming amount of critics hated it, with some reviewers saying that this was the worst MCU movie ever, even placing it below Thor the Dark World. So, my expectations were really low when I was going into the theater, but walking out after the movie finished, all I could think about was, did people watch the wrong movie? Did I watch the wrong movie? Because I was enthralled by the Eternals. I can't even say that word, enthralled, but I was enthralled by the Eternals. I was engaged with it in a way that I haven't been engaged with an MCU movie in such a long time. So let me try to break down the plot of Eternals. The Eternals in this movie are basically aliens who are sent to different planets by Celestials, an attempt to fight off an invasive alien species known as Deviants. This movie follows 10 Eternals who are tasked to protect Earth and humankind from Deviants, but are not allowed to interfere with natural human affairs unless humanity as a whole is threatened. I think, because the movie kind of skews the line between what Eternals can and can't do, and it never seems to address this. The plot of the movie picks up when Earth's Eternals, after the last deviant is killed, decide to go their own separate ways, until the emergence of a new type of deviant starts to hunt them down, which forces them to get the team back together. Obligatory spoiler warning. So if you haven't yet watched this movie and you're planning to, don't watch this video because I'm going to be spoiling the movie. Although I will say that regardless of what you hear, this is a movie that is warranted to be watched on the big screen. If you're on the fence about it, just go to the theater when tickets are cheap. But from here on out, I'll be discussing spoilers, so there's your spoiler warning. I suppose I will start with my negative thoughts or certain parts that I disliked about the movie first. So there are 10 main characters in this movie. I found the majority of the characters interesting, and I'll get you those characters in a bit. But there are 10 characters that the movie has to more or less flesh out. That and it still has to juggle with the driving conflict of the film, that being both the Celestial and the Deviants. At 2 hours and 35 minutes, this movie is long, although I would say that it doesn't feel like it, because there's a lot going on. Yet, there are still characters that are sidelined like Makkari, Gilgamesh, and Tina, who I felt were conveniently isolated during their 500-year break, so that the narrative won't really have a lot to explain when it caught up with them in the present day. I do feel though that like Makkari could have had a more emotionally resonant role if she had been more prominent in Druig's storyline during the 500 period break. If she had been more prominent in Druig's storyline during the 500-year period, instead of just being isolated and waiting in their mothership. My next little nitpick was with the secondary villains, the Deviants, and their motivations. So one of the Deviants manages to gain consciousness and is able to speak. He reveals that they're basically hunting down the Eternals because they've basically massacred his species. But, and this is a big but, the Eternals only attacked them because they were defending humans from being murdered by the Deviants. So the whole storyline with the Deviants felt very convoluted and convenient and almost forced. Despite all of these little nitpicks on my part, I really enjoyed this movie. I liked the majority of these characters, their storylines, their relationships, the themes, and just how visually gorgeous some scenes looked. The Eternals doesn't really feel like an MCU movie at certain parts because it feels a bit darker and more mature than what we've typically gotten out of an average MCU movie. And Chloe Zhao's care and sensibility for character writing really shines through, especially with her direction and the talent of these actors, which include Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, Richard Madden, and Brian Tyree Henry, to name a few actors of the star-studded cast. Zhao and these actors really managed to bring out the humanity of the Eternals, who are basically these alien humanoid robots. It's interesting to see the way that they deal with the question of humanity and how they each decide to basically love humanity in different ways. Cersei and Phastos integrate within humanity by choosing to love and be with human partners. Kingo chooses to entertain and be adored by humans. On the other hand, Druid feels that over-policing humanity is necessary to prevent violence and death. Then we have Sprite, who admires the way of life of modern-day people and becomes jealous of it, when her everlasting form of a 12-year-old prevents her from growing up and experiencing that life. I really like the themes of identity and purpose that the movie explores. We have Icarus, an Eternal who can fly and shoot lasers from his eyes. Zhao has said that her inspiration for this character came from Zack Snyder's Superman, which she wasn't shy to reference within the movie, as a child literally calls him Superman. Something that really attracted me to the character was not only his disconnect from humanity, but also the way in which he was very dedicated to his mission, that his mission is justified for the greater good of the natural course of the universe, which for me made him comparable to Omni-Man from Invincible, although less extreme of course. After he realizes that he's failed his purpose / mission of securing the way for a new Celestial, he does the darkest thing anyone has really done in the MCU, and that is he basically commits suicide. That's really sad. And the narrative doesn't even attempt to address this. To be fair, the other Eternals just see him flying away into space, but afterwards he's just gone. They don't mention him again, not even to say, hey, I wonder where Icarus, where did he go to? You know? Then we have my favorite character in this movie named Sprite. Like I mentioned above, she is an Eternal, but she physically appears to be 12 years old. This proves to be a problem when everyone goes their separate ways and integrate within society, where she sees people falling in love and building their lives, having families, things that she can't realistically do looking the way that she does. She questions why the Celestial decided to make her this way, really making it obvious that the Celestial is a metaphor for God. And there's a helplessness and conflict within her that for me made her the best written character in the movie, and also the most tragic. In the third act of the movie, she decides to stick with Icarus and their sky god, not really out of devotion to the Celestial, but more out of necessity, with the idea that maybe in the next world they go to, she'll fit in better with her power. Ironically enough, is that she can project illusions, which she'll often use to tell stories with these projections, which I thought was really cool and interesting way of using her powers. In turn, this also feeds into her relationship with Kingo, who is also one of my favorite characters. Being inspired by her storytelling, he becomes a Bollywood star, which was just random, and I loved every minute of that. So then we have Kingo and his assistant called Karun, who have a really great friendship, work relationship. It's something. It's like a relation. It's like a work friendship thing. It's really heartwarming, especially because they are the comedic relief of the movie. Although sometimes their comedy, especially Karun's, feel unwelcomed, almost kind of intrusive, because it came at times when it felt like it interrupted the flow of the more serious conversations within the Eternals. I liked it, but I can see where it doesn't feel necessary, and that's why I say that it feels kind of weighed down by that MCU formula of telling jokes. But I think I'll stop gushing over the characters now, or else I can just go on forever, because that was my favorite part of the movie, the characters, and that's why I sort of focused on the characters that I like, because that's, for me, they symbolize the strongest parts of the movie. I will say there are parts where the movie just feels cheesy though, such as when Karun thanks the Eternals for being the first superheroes, or how they just conveniently happen to have enough celestial energy to turn Sprite into a human at the end. But I think within the context of the movie, that cheesiness worked. I wanted Sprite to be happy, you know? I'm glad she got the justice or the ending that she deserved. At its core, the Eternals feels like it wants to be a love letter from all these powerful beings, like all these superheroes, to humanity, but it never really seems to reach its full potential. And I feel that was due to the MCU constraints, because when this movie works, it works. Chloe Zhao really makes this movie visually stunning, and she does a really excellent job at blocking the scenes with the actors. I feel these things are the reason why it should be watched in theaters, to get the full scope of things. Overall though, I give this my full recommendation. It surpassed my standards. It's worth your time. Yeah, it's divisive, but I think that's part of the charm to it. You can go watch it and see where you stand. But with that, that's the end of this review. That's all I have to say about it at this moment. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time.